Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and tonight we have one of our special guests and one of our representatives, Miss Ashley Manlove Bland, or is it Bland Madlove?
Bland Manlove.
All right. Hey, Ashley, I talked to you off camera the last time you was on, and you brought another one of your state reps on from St. Louis, and we had that was a really good show, I thought, and had a bunch of information, learned some things that were going on in St. Louis, and got introduced to uh, who you know is your currency in life, and I appreciate you introducing me to that state rep. Now, what I would like to say to you, what's going on down at the state, and what are some of the projects you're working on, and some of the things that you think our community needs to know and get behind?
Okay, well, what's going on at the state? We're kind of in transition right now as session starts in about 3 weeks. So it's the governor appointing people. He just appointed a new attorney general since Eric Schmidt beat Trudy Bush Valentine for that congressional seat. So it's really just getting started. Pre-filing has started, so legislators have started submitting their bill ideas for the season. So things like that are getting started. What am I going to be working on? Well, I kind of take a jack of all trades approach. Most of my legislation, as I've said before, comes from either a direct interaction with a constituent or a national movement, probably from the National Black Caucus or something like that. So I have a plethora of ideas, starting from certificates of needs for liquor stores, because why do they keep popping up, and why are not grocery stores popping up in our community? That doesn't help us. I always have automatic voter registration. Shoot, there's so many things that I really focus on. Right now, outside of Just City, working a lot in the schools. It has always been my understanding that it is the energy of the youth and the wisdom of the elders that makes this thing go. But our youth don't know anything, and because they haven't been taught. Civics has been taken out of school. The apathy in Kansas City is very high and has been for a very long time, voting at 12 to 15% as a city turnout. So the kids really don't know what's going on. They have no historical knowledge, and they're seeing things that's scaring them. So I've taken it on as a personal duty to go and explain those things to them. I first start off by talking about voting in a nonpartisan manner, and just the fact that it is your constitutional duty. And as a society, you have to civically engage, and it'll go bananas, as we see, when you don't engage. So getting them to understand their power, and then just kind of giving them a historical context about what's going on and what's happening. I'm actually going later on today to talk to one of the schools, and I was at one yesterday morning and another one yesterday afternoon. So I really believe that the way that we change the dynamic that has happened in our community and the destruction that has happened in our community is by raising up our kids, and by getting them to see their worth, killing the narrative that my vote doesn't count and my voice is irrelevant, which has all come out of course, COINTELPRO and their assassinations, and survival mode that has happened because of that fear. So that's really what I'm doing right now.
Tell me this: who do you think is responsible for our kids going in this misdirection? See, because we're in media, I think that media has really influenced not just our kids, has influenced us. And I'm really glad to see that you're taking a hands-on approach and you actually are going where the kids are because they don't know their history. What they know is what they see on TV and these game shows. And from a political standpoint and a national safety standpoint, you see how the government right now is now talking about TikTok and uh, the things that China is learning, the information, because all our kids are on these different things and the marketing and all of that. And when you look at what they're ingesting, how can they pay attention to where they're really going to be going, where the opportunities that are out here and how to prepare themselves to take advantage. And so I must applaud you on that. Since we are talking about the community, off camera, I talked to you a little bit about group uh, economics and block voting. How do you feel about that?
Well, we don't survive in Jefferson City in the chamber unless we vote in a block. We get things that we get to change and amend legislation that isn't for us by voting in a block. That's the only way you I'm sorry, hold on just a second. Harry was going to. All right, cut that, start that over. So group economics and group voting is the only way that we function in the legislature. You can see group economics really, everybody's on this anti-Semitism and fascism again. But what the Jewish community has done is protected itself and insulated itself by investing in itself. It's common within the Jewish community to go support your startup and even if they're bad, continue to support them so that they can learn and grow to become better. Where we in the African American community in Kansas City tend to not pay attention to the startups unless it's our friend or our relative, and then so therefore they do not get the income that they need to sustain. We know most businesses shut down within the first 3 years because they don't get the capital that they need. But then that also continues to leave resources out of the community because those startups keep shutting down. Then you have to go outside of your, housing area, which, that 5-block area where it should be your grocery store, your bank, and, maybe a clothing store that you frequent or something like that, a restaurant. You then have to go outside of that space, which further takes that tax money away from your area. So it's all really connected. And if everybody, and we see it all the time, we constantly say, oh, well, there was four Black people on the same ticket, so they split the Black vote. So now we don't have, that position did not receive a Black, or a Black person appointed to it. We see it all the time. So what is going to change is, or things will change when we again take on that mentality of community, of selflessness, and understanding that voting is how I give back. Voting is how I impact my child's school. Voting is how I impact my tax base. So once we can step out of survival mode for 5 seconds long enough to know we're struggling and not surviving because we're not doing it together, I think that that's what's going to change. And so I'm trying to make that change in these children. I go from everywhere to middle schools to high schools, public and charter. I haven't really messed with the private schools too much, but they have resources, you know. And I remember being a child and seeing, Cleaver as mayor coming into the school and everybody going crazy because he was such a superstar. Um, and a plethora of them, my grandmother as well. So I want to get back to that, and I want to invest back in the community, and that's how we do that.
I think that you're right on point with that. My next question would be, uh, do you feel that we as people get too much into personalities instead of uh, what is actually being done by individuals?
Always. My grandmother used to say, "You don't have to like me, but you will respect me." And now, because of participation awards and like the politicalization of your feelings, we now have people who are not effective because of their own personal matters and qualms, uh, representing some of us, you know? And so that person, there's one that I'm thinking about in particular who is a Black woman, and she's not a part of the Black Caucus. She constantly reams on the Black Caucus, and actively tries to subvert our bills. So while we're doing that, but people like her personality when she, shows up in front of a room. So she's still a legislator, but has done literally nothing for the empowerment of the Black community, even though she's the only Black committee chair. You know what I mean? So who's a Democrat? So it's things like that that stifle us when we get into these, Twitter wars and all that kind of stuff. It just distracts you from the facts of, okay, either this project has a good ROI or it doesn't. And now and people are going to have different opinions about what a good ROI is, depending on your political affiliation and your social economics. But that's the part that we should be focusing on. And there's way more things that we agree on than we don't, but we let our emotions let us drive us into these deep wedge issues and trying to make a point and make a stance when, there's thousands of kids on the Missouri foster care rolls. There's, they just shut down Agape, which was a school that took in a bunch of children in the system and was abusing them, physically and sexually and mentally. So there are things that we could focus on, but we tend to, now it seems that our pride and our posts are getting in the way of us being humans, and being compassionate towards each other.
Tell me this. We talked off camera, and it's self-serving. This question: how important do you think digital media, being able to receive information in a timely fashion in today's world, as it relates to Black digital media?
Well, I mean, it's important because we're in a digital time. So as to where newspapers or physical copies are, going bad or going, extinct, and so everybody's moved online. It's important that there are entities that represent you, whomever that is. It's important that there are entities out there that represents you, so that you can get the information that you need that's directly affecting you, because a bill might affect one community one way and another community another way. So if you don't have somebody translating that to you, you become, aloof and unaware. And that's when that apathy starts to kick in, because you stop caring. But if there's somebody, we all know representation matters, and if you can see it, you can be it, and all those great sayings. So when you see a Black person telling you, hey, this legislation, I constantly use digital media over this recreational marijuana, trying to warn everybody. There's only one Black dispensary now. How do you think they're going to give us more if we open this up to them? And there's nobody with a simple marijuana charge. So none of that expungement stuff is going to work. And we just saw an article drop maybe yesterday, day before, where DOC said there's only 34 people in DOC for the state who qualified for that type of expungement. The rest of them, it's kind of iffy, and they have to get into that. They may apply, and then it's up to judicial discretion. And then everybody else is at the municipalities. And there was no direction on how the municipalities were supposed to handle those expungements. So I used a lot of digital media, some Black, some white, to get that message out. And, unfortunately, it wasn't heard, but that doesn't mean that I didn't put it out there and that I didn't try to educate everybody.
Yeah, that's been on national news and a lot of talk shows as of late, and they don't have the personnel, the judges, and what have you. But this is my feeling on all of that with the heroin addiction, the cocaine, and drugs in general. When it destroyed our community, it was time to go to jail. When you after 20 years of ravaging our families, our businesses, our whole community from top to bottom. And I'm saying it systemically, and it's still here, then they talk about its treatment.
Yeah.
And decriminalization.
Well, it
And
is, but it's just like when I gave a representative this example. What Black person do you know owns a plane and could then drive it or fly it from in the States to South America, pick up a load, and be driven back unidentified? That wasn't Black people pumping that into our community. That was pumped in by the government, CIA actually. And so now, right, it was the war on drugs. But then once it started hitting white people and the opioid epidemic, now it's, we need to think about their mental health and all this stuff that we've been saying, but of course, now it's affecting white people. It's the same thing that Walmart did with Juneteenth. We've been talking about Juneteenth since Juneteenth, trying to get Walmart to engage in Juneteenth. And then it becomes federal, and all of a sudden, Walmart drops ice cream that's watermelon flavored and got candles called It's a Vibe, trying to celebrate Juneteenth, which none of that has anything to do with Juneteenth, maybe the watermelon. But we have to stop letting the capitalism monster take advantage of us, because that's its favorite thing to do. And if it can split you, like a hand, break you off. Oh, I don't like him because he said something about my mama, and I don't like him because the way he drives, then we're not the fist. We're not that collective vote. And you can get way more done with this than with an open hand. So,
Manlove, I definitely want to bring you back on if we can get you back on after the holidays, because you're another one speaking truth to power. See, some of the people, they back up on this stuff because they afraid they're gonna lose their job and their livelihood, and they right. But it's our job, my job, my fiduciary responsibility, to at least ask the questions and what have you. Then wherever it go. And I liked how you felt the same way. They can't say that you didn't try to make some changes. They can't say that you didn't try to introduce this. And I think that's the spirit that you have. One last thing, and I think we can talk about this at our next interview. See, I don't believe in that diversity stuff. The diversity came out because it's the same thing as the drug thing. I was one of the first people when I had my construction company to go down to Jeff City to testify. There was no MBE or 10% or what have you. And I went down there and I testified, and uh, it was it was a ploy. So now they talk about giving you 10%, but then what do they do? A year or two later, they say, well, we need to widen that WMBE. So now the contractors or whoever, now they wives apply for and they get it. Then they bring rainbow, they bring this and that. That all disenfranchises Black people. And all this diversity stuff is designed to do the same thing as uh, football and all of these things. The people who you give your money to, you buy the Chiefs, the Dallas, and all of that, you can't even afford to go to the game. And those people are the people that run the team that is running America, and it's all about capitalism. And when you're not educating your kids and you're not educating yourself, because now I'm going back to Black media and digital media when it doesn't cost you anything, because our platform, you got a phone, all you got to do is go and take a look. But all this diversification, it all hurts Black people. We built this country.
I think that the downside to desegregation is the dissolvement of our actual community, where a lot of the other melanated cultures or brown, cultures, foreign cultures, all kind of they still stayed next to each other. It just meant that they could go do business, with whomever. We dispersed completely, and took on the mentality, the white man's water is colder. So we ran to all of them instead of staying within ourselves, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm against diversity, because if you don't travel, if you don't grow, if you don't learn and meet other people and experience other people, then you don't reach the enlightenment that you have the potential to do. But with desegregation, it broke up our community where other communities stayed together. And all of the other movements. As a gay woman, I know that gay rights have come off of copying the civil rights movement. But I also know that Pauli Murray, who probably would have been a trans woman or a non-binary woman, wrote a lot of those statements that were used in the Supreme Court. So we all are integrated into this, and we don't have to necessarily separate ourselves to make us different. If we were just going off of capitalism, like we say, we wouldn't have to do any of these designations. But I tried to actually get a DBE designation started for the state of Missouri through our Cannabis Freedom Act, which was the legislative version of recreational, which would have actually expunged people and all those kinds of things. But I wanted to make sure that you're right. MBEs aren't getting it, because MBE can be any kind of a minority, which is any kind of brown person. And then and WBEs are taking over because somehow white women are still a minority, even though they're half of the country's population. So they're coming in, like you said, and taking over those contracts where they're not even running anything. They're just the face. They're like the token to get the qualification for it. So I figured if I created a DBE, which is at the feds, but the state has to enact, that would take away their ability, because they're not disadvantaged. They're just a minority, quote unquote. So I hear you.
All right. In closing out, would you have some final words for our audience?
Everybody go get registered to vote. None of this matters if you don't engage. So sos.mo.gov. That's Secretary of State, sos.mo.gov. You can go on there right on your cell phone, get registered to vote. Say I'm on my phone. It'll have you sign it right there on your phone. And because we have school board and city council coming up in April, and we have to get engaged. We have to.
All right. I'm gonna steal Jim Watt's line, like I like to do. I like to make him mad. He always closes with, "It was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show." I'm like, Jim, you just too damn nice. But as we always close, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
Say that.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.